The French novelist and poet Victor Hugo reminded us that no one can resist an idea whose time has come. And indeed, I think today we are here to launch the Youth Development Institute, whose idea, or an idea whose time has arrived. We do not know for certain today, and hopefully in the near future, but we hope that generations to come will applaud our efforts as one of the most historic and defining moments. I've been an activist in the youth sector for many, many years, and of course I'm still an activist. And in my years of interaction with fellow activists, policymakers, youth workers, and young people themselves, who have always complained about the death of timely and cutting youth development research and information. And we have lamented the lack of research based on evidence to inform and drive youth development programs and policymakers, and have somewhat become victims of newspaper headlines or political grandstanding, and that has somewhat dominated the determination of the agenda and focus of our national consciousness. Research on youth development and youth issues have also been very sporadic, uneven, and in many instances outdated. Youth development research has regularly been issue-based, whilst this research has assisted with informing a specific issue. Its lack of a multidisciplinary approach has failed to answer the key question relating to the issues and challenges that young people are faced with. And I think this lack of multidisciplinary approach has resulted in poor and fragmented information for youth policy and program development, and sometimes obviously to wrong conclusions about what the problem is, and even worse, even the failure to determine what actually the problem is. And I think this would be very critical for the work of the Institute, chairperson of the board. Where youth research has been produced, its value has also been frequently challenged by activists and youth workers, bemoaning its relevance and also being out of touch with what is happening at the local level. So the localization of the function of the Institute is going to be very critical, because too much ivory tower theorizing and not enough praxis. The gap between youth research, youth activism, and youth work practice is wide and results in missed opportunities for catalytic partnerships that can inform a progressive youth agenda at policy and also at a programmatic level. We have relied too much on youth research generated by the Global North, as the Vice Chancellor has said, and allowed our own research agenda to be disproportionately influenced. Youth research and research agendas from the Global North has failed to take into consideration the nuances and diversity of the South African youth. Upon the appointment of the new board, and also in my interaction with them, the NYDA board in its sessions identified the need for a youth institute that would drive research, an institute that would develop evidence-based youth policies and programs, an institute that would be a hub for young researchers, and also an institute that would be a central point of reference for all youth-related matters, an institute that will also collaborate with youth activists and youth workers to advance the youth development agenda at a research, policy, and program development level. An institute that would strategically set the research agenda for youth development rather than to respond to it. An institute that would be world-class, an institute that would critically contribute to the youth research agenda of the African continent and global south. In fact, hardly many of the people who have established themselves as experts on youth development issues most of them are neither youth nor expert on those issues that they on a daily basis comment on. And unfortunately, they get to determine the agenda on what needs to be done. And I suppose it is that time when this institute needs to occupy that particular space, so that what we hear on radio and what we see on television should be based on expertise developed from this Youth Development Institute. And I promise you that because we've seen the structure there that the MD is representing, we would obviously not want to compromise the integrity of the institute, because I think that's going to be very, very critical if we are to rely on what comes out of the institute. I believe that we are here today to launch that type of institute that begins to speak to those issues, the Youth Development Institute. And I want to commend the NYDA for its foresight, CEO and board members who are here. And I also want to commend, I believe that the NYDA has obviously found a responsive and enthusiastic partner in the University of Johannesburg for the hosting of this important institute. And although, Prof, you will be hosting the institute, a collaborative model with other institutions of higher learning should obviously be adopted. And this collaborative model must draw upon the residual expertise found across the South African higher education sector to bring innovation, capacity, and also, I believe, to leverage resources. The youth research agenda and the need of the youth sector are simply too enormous and varied, and therefore collaboration is going to be extremely effective. I was actually excited, Managing Director, with what you were clearly presenting, which is what the Institute will be responding to, which is not only a research agenda by outputs, but also the repository and portal, the entrepreneurial ventures, the policy insight and strategic partnership. And I think all of this will contribute immensely to this key sector that we all have an interest. And I think more importantly and more excitingly is the portal, which will help the NYDA and ourselves to be able to give the President and Parliament the status of youth. I'm sure the CEO will whisper to you how far back are we with regard to that very important mandate. But not only as a measure of compliance, but also to know that which has already been done. We should not be like the people who, protest, saying that they want a school when there's a school in the backyard. And that's exactly what the status of the status of youth report is all about, to know what progress has been covered and what is it that needs to be done. On Monday, I spoke at the second Commonwealth Conference on Youth, which is hosted collectively with the Commonwealth Secretariat and the University of South Africa and the NYDA. And youth workers, we see them as essential in contributing to the development of our youth, and that youth work is also a catalyst in youth development, guided by the realities facing young people, and also anchored in the belief that young people are a force for peace, democracy, equality, good governance, and poverty eradication. And of course, some have seen young people as the antithesis of all of these things that I've mentioned, and therefore can become that explosion that we obviously need to avert. This work cannot take place without effective youth development policy, programmatic initiatives, youth development research, and also an effective youth workers. Youth workers from South Africa and other Commonwealth member states have advocated for more academic offerings to train youth workers and to professionalize youth work. And I believe that this institute can respond to this need by developing these academic programs that effectively responds to youth work and propels it forward in its journey towards professionalization. One of the things that the Vice Chancellor indicated, which we are spearheading, is the rollout of the National Youth Service Program. And we believe that the Institute will play a critical role in helping to complement with the capacity in the NYDA so that we define programs and also ensure that there is a clear definition of what we mean by a National Youth Service Program and how do we get young people involved in that. When we launched the National Youth Policy 2020, we made a point to call to the private sector to support youth development. Recognizing the unique position that they play in our society, we are of a strong view that the Institute, the Youth Development Institute, provides a good opportunity for partnerships with the private sector to strengthen youth policy and program development. And once again, I want to reiterate that the private sector should join in with regards to these initiatives. Whilst the NYDA and UJ are founding partners of this institute, the vision and intention has always been for strong civil society involvement. And civil society regularly advances perspective on youth development that is often missed by government and academia. And their involvement is therefore vital for this institute to deliver on its mandate for good governance. It is for this reason that the board, quite impressively, has included members from the civil society. As the presidency, through our Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, we will follow the work of the Institute with keen interest, and more so because we have integrated the National Youth Policy into government's medium-term strategy framework, and all of government is required to report on a quarterly basis on what they are doing to implement the National Youth Policy. And therefore, our collective work as the department and the Youth Development Institute is going to be critical in ensuring that we ensure the veracity of the implementation of the National Youth Policy. But also through our oversight role of the NYDA, we expect to receive regular reports, progress report on the work that the Institute is doing. And with its mandate of planning, monitoring and evaluation, we will also engage with the Institute on various matters that relates to youth policy. And as you know, the President has instructed that all of government should make youth development their priority. And therefore it means that the responsibility of the Institute is much more bigger than it is. And I said to you, Managing Director and VC earlier on, we obviously don't expect this to be the Sangoma of all the challenges that young people are confronted with, but obviously to do your best together with the board to help us think through differently on how to engage with the challenges that confront young people. And therefore, on behalf of government, we wish the Institute, the board, the Managing Director, and everyone who is involved much success. And indeed, it is an idea whose time has come and no one can stop it. Thank you.
The University of Johannesburg. Rethink, reinvent.